Olá a todos, bem-vindos a mais um episódio de Conversa de Fundos e hoje a gente vai falar sobre soluções de private equity em mercados globais com alguém que tem feito isso há 30 anos. Hi Merrick, switching to English because our guest is a foreigner. Thank you so much for being here with us. So Merrick is a partner of Patria, head of private equity for global private market solutions, our platform that permits that local investors access global private markets in alternative solutions that we think are good for them as a whole. Thank you for being here.
Carolina, obrigado. Minhas desculpas, eu não falo português, tudo bem.
Your Portuguese is better, better than my English.
No. Nice to be here, thank you.
Oh, good. So, Merrick, we could start maybe by you telling a little bit of your experience in this market. Like, how long have you been doing this and how have you seen this market evolve?
So it's going to be surprising given how youthful I look. It's over 30 years now. So I'm Australian originally. I went to the UK in 1992 and got involved in the private equity industry there as an advisor. And it's amazing how much it's changed since then. I remember the first investment I was involved in was a £28 million management buyout, quite small. And that was the investors in that, it was CVC, Cinven, and what's called Bridgepoint. So these are really sort of from a private equity perspective, household names where they were investing about £5 million each.
When?
This was in 1992, 93. Now, you know, CVC, they're not investing less than sort of hundreds of millions now. So amazing change there. I remember, again, early on going to a drinks and meeting a gentleman called Jeremy Collar, who was talking about, these secondaries, we were going to start buying
secondaries already?
Yeah, but it was so new, and I was thinking, why would someone want to sell their interest in a so the industry's changed hugely over that time, and I've been very privileged to see that over an extended period of time.
Yeah, always been on following the secondaries market since then?
No, so I was 5 years as an advisor. I then joined a private equity firm to be an investor in low mid-market buyouts. I was there for 13 years, a company called Primary Capital, then did some other things and became an institutional investor in 2012. So that's what I've been doing since then. So this is where we're advising or managing private equity investments on behalf of institutions, family offices, pension funds, to be investing directly into the private equity market. For them, there's three ways typically to invest in the private equity market. There's what are called primary investments. This is sort of the lifeblood of the industry, where a manager goes and raises a fund from institutions to invest in a certain sector or geography. And typically they'll invest that over a 3 to 5 year period and hopefully return the money most of it over 12 years. The secondary market, which I described, is where actually people go and acquire those primary interests when they've already been invested for a period of time, so they know what they're buying in that. And then there's co-investments as well. And so this is where people invest directly into a company alongside the manager of that fund. So those are the three typical instruments that investors use to invest in the market.
And for our Brazilian audience, which would you say are the main advantages of invest on primaries, secondaries, and co-investments?
So I think for someone looking at a private equity program over a long period of time, they should do a combination of all three because they each have different dynamics to them. So one thing about the primary investing is that you make a commitment to a fund, that money is drawn down over, maybe I said 3 to 5 year period, and comes back longer. So that's a long-term investment and you don't have the control over that. But it's very, very difficult to time the market. As we know, markets go up and down, and the thing that, one of the reasons that private equity has been so popular is that for long-term investors, it provides a definite higher return than listed markets, but you don't have that liquidity. So primaries are very important to do that. You should never time the market, very consistent. But secondaries are ones where you can go in and to start a program because you're putting the money in the ground straight away. You're getting that to work. You understand what you're buying. There's this thing called the J curve in private equity where, and this is one that actually sort of stops that happening. And co-investments can be a very tactical tool to enable investors to maybe invest more in a particular sector, or saying, actually, I want to invest more now, maybe in a few years, so I can do that straight away. So these are, would say, a sophisticated program should involve all three of those. And when we're managing investments on behalf of our clients, they all have different ideas of what they want, and we need to be able to provide the full range of options to them.
Okay. And when we see some of our clients, investors here in Brazil, they often start their programs investing in primaries. But like investing on secondaries and secondary funds, often they would have a good experience in this kind of private equity funds because they don't have this, they have a lower J curve, better experience on distribution of cash flows, higher DPI. Do you agree with this statement?
I agree that it's a good way to start. One of the problems you have, I guess the challenge with secondary investments is that if you want to build up something in more of a sectoral place, I like a particular sector or a geography in that, with maybe investing in a secondary fund, you lose some of that control because these secondary funds are typically highly diversified, go into different geographies and sectors. And so when you have a primary program or co-investments, you can pick and choose. So for us, for most of our clients, we have been pretty overweight on healthcare, technology, SaaS, consumer staples for a period of time, but in a secondary fund, it's difficult to do that. I go back to what I said before, co-investments again, and so, well, actually, if I have more of a general program, maybe this is a way I can be specific about investing in co-investments. The other thing I should say, though, is that typically for people looking to do co-investments by themselves, they have to be an investor in the fund of the GP's managing in that, because that's a sort of a privilege that the manager will always give to its investors first.
Yeah. It's an advantage of being on that with that GP,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, like for our audience and investors, like there are so many features and characteristics in this kind of investments. We are talking about like on the maturity of a fund on which we invest, like in primaries, secondaries, or in co-investment, which are assets of these funds. We can talk also about mid-market, lower mid-market. Would you describe these features to them so they know on what you focus and why?
Sure. So, again, over my time, the market's changed a huge amount. If I were to go back probably to the financial crisis, I think a lot of the firms we almost describe it as private equity 1.0, which was what private equity has always been good at, is getting businesses outside the public gaze to be really incentivizing management teams to work very well and do well if the investors do well. Have a particular strategy, maybe focused over a 3 to 5 year period. But what's really changed, I think, in the last 10 to 15 years is the sector specialization that certainly started with the large firms. They worked out what they were good at and not good at, focused very much on that. They started to understand sectors really, really well, gave them advantage in buying. And then when they acquired those businesses, they brought a whole range of value creation tools into the business. So it'll be HR or specific expertise in that sector that provides a huge advantage in ownership over many other ownership models. And what we've seen progressively over time is what started at the top end, the larger mega cap market, has now come down into the mid market and the low end market, where you get very, very talented teams who are real expertise in certain sectors. So they're really good. They're better buyers and owners of businesses in that sector than others, which is tremendous. The returns that those have tended to generate over time have been better than the larger and mid-cap funds.
Because they're smaller, right?
They're smaller, they exhibit high growth rates, there's more exit opportunities to them, a whole range of reasons. And the other aspect is, and it goes back to that constructing a portfolio now, that actually for our investors, we can now come up with portfolios along sectoral lines rather than, let's have a geographic split and not know what it is. So there's a huge number of reasons that the mid-market has just been a very good environment for investors in there, and less open to the cyclicality of larger markets and certainly lower correlation. So many factors that go into why we think it's a really attractive market to invest in.
Yeah, we could do an episode just on that. Yeah, and we've spoken to some sophisticated investors during those couple of days, and some of them are looking specifically into that market, like on niche asset managers, like European ones on this market. And sometimes it's very hard for them to access these investment firms, particularly when they're on the beginning of their funds. Why would it be interesting to be on the earlier vintages of these funds?
Well, you could spend a lot of time talking about that around what's the appropriate time to invest in.
Yeah, this would be a better question.
In these funds. Look, it's always very interesting. The private equity market is constantly evolving. We see managers sort of spin outs and starting up, or they get a particular skill set, and so we're following them. Often the first fund is a very attractive one to be in because they're all together and they need to make that work. Some people prefer to wait and see how they go, and so there's as I said, you could spend a lot of time talking about it, but I think that, look, we don't have any hard and fast rules about that. We certainly encourage and invest in first-time funds, typically investing maybe in a co-investment alongside them as they're going, to really understand how they go about things and do it in a
very high touch with them.
There's also a type of investment we called a late-stage primary. So this is where a manager is raising funds, that it's taking them a time. They've already made some investments in the fund, and if you come in later on, you can see, well, actually, what have they invested in? How have they gone about it? How are those things performing? So that's an attractive way to get in there. But I think going back to your original question, it's very difficult for people in foreign markets or whatever to access that unless they really understand that market themselves and they know what's going on. So that's again the service that we provide to global investors.
How do you screen and map those talents, those emerging funds? How do you do that?
So the team, we spend a lot of time on planes meeting people. That's the job of the primary team and the team in general, to be out there understanding what's going on. I think we're in a privileged position in that we've been doing this for 25 years, so we're very well known in the marketplace. I think when people are looking to start up or do something else, we'd be one of the first people that contact to see we're thinking about this. So I think it's something you need to be embedded into the ecosystem. So it's a lot of work screening this, and just because we come across something that isn't right for us now for our clients, it may be in some time. So you always keep your options open and a good relationship with everyone.
Yeah, good. And talking a little bit about secondaries, I think we should do an episode on secondaries because there's so much to talk about. But there are these two kind of transactions, like the GP-led ones and the LP-led ones. I think many of us have heard of it. Can you explain this simply to our audience?
Certainly. So the traditional LP secondary is, as I described before, so this is where an investor has an interest in a fund that's been investing. It's typically the age of those are for us between 5 and 8 years, so it's probably been fully invested. Maybe some businesses have been sold, but they're certainly up through their value creation stage, and it enables secondary investors to look at that portfolio, assess what they think of it, and come up with a price to buy that. So in that one, you're typically buying an interest that could be anything between maybe 5 and 20 underlying companies in that. So that's your traditional secondary. The GP-led the secondary is a relatively new phenomenon. Probably has been increasing over maybe the last 6 years or three in particular. And these are situations where there may be an asset or a few assets in a fund that, for whatever reason, rather than that be sold to an outside party, the GP itself, the manager, thinks that there's a better opportunity for its investors to bring in outside ones and have a change of control. And they bring in secondary investors in to look at that. It's quite attractive from a buyer's perspective, because one of the biggest risks we always find, say, in co-investments, when a manager is buying a new investment, is for all the diligence they do in that, they don't own the business yet and they find out things afterwards. With these GP-led transactions, this is an asset, usually a good one, or a few, that they've been held for an extended period of time. They know this asset very well. They know the things that need to be done to create further value, probably over an extended period of time. That's why they're undertaking this. So again, a particularly attractive aspect of it, because the manager knows it really well. The issue is that they're very concentrated. Again, one of the advantages of a normal LP-led transaction, it's in a portfolio in there. So this is a relatively new phenomenon. It's something that we've been very active in, and to date, they've performed very, very well.
And now a tricky question, but it has a lot to do with what we hear here in Brazil. Sometimes in GP-led transactions, which are the tools that you use to mitigate conflicts of interest?
Yep. So the first thing to know is that when you're an investor in that fund, and the GP's prime responsibility is to the investors in that fund, so they need to be very clear that this is in the best interests of their investors. The good GPs will think about that a lot. They'll get outside advisors. They'll be talking to the advisory board. So every fund has an advisory board to assist them in that. So they go through a process to do that. The other thing that typically happens in these situations is they offer the existing investors the opportunity to reinvest or roll their commitment into the new vehicle if they think, actually, we don't want to take the liquidity now, we'd like to go to the next round. So again, the best GPs go through that process and don't just present investors with a fait accompli.
Merrick, we could be here for hours, days, talking about this subject. It's so interesting, and congratulations on your work. It's so good to have you here with your expertise to offer these solutions and this expertise to our local investors.
Muito obrigado, Carolina. Delightful, but as I say, I've got a great team behind me, but thank you for the time.
Yeah, good. Vejo vocês no próximo Conversa de Fundos. Todas as sugestões de tópicos para a gente trazer aqui são bem-vindas. Até mais.